clouds, mystery, mist, clouds, mystery. Long ago we slumbered in the misty womb of creation, deep in a dreamless sleep of origin. As our souls awoke in the dawn of sunlight, we found ourselves on earth, a lush garden where all creatures were fully, joyfully at home. Yet even in the beauty and bliss of this paradise, we two-leggeds grew curious. The elemental forces echoed our wild restlessness. Windstorms and floods and exploding mountains burst among us. We became greedy to control even the weather. We lost our sense of home, and we were exiled from this garden of ecstatic belonging. We wandered, we mourned, we made music, we made beauty, we made story.
A Kalahari Bushman said, "You must wake up twice every morning. You must wake up your body and get out of bed, and then you must wake up your heart to the touch of the world upon it."
The body likes circles. It likes circular environments. Right angles come from the intellect. They don't exist in nature. So there are all these invisible stresses working on you that you don't even know. Most people are just not aware where the stress is coming from, but it's coming from their environment.
We have forgotten the joy of our origin. We have forgotten the song that we sang in the clouds.
We are all one, and obviously there are aspects of ourselves that need to learn how that feels, what it's going to feel like to be on this planet as we destroy certain aspects of it.
What a wonder. I can't imagine that anybody is not secretly head over heels in love with this world. It's such a delicious place, and frightening, and difficult, and shot through with shadow.
And we now face what may be the sixth great extinction. It is urgent that we listen to the earth and her wisdom keepers who bring us messages from the imaginal realm of her dreaming in the clouds of origin.
You go into the world and you have the response of the heart to what's presented to the senses, and we're being touched by communications from the natural world every millisecond of every day of our lives. And we're virtually the only culture on the face of the earth that has no training or capacity to respond to it at all, because we are trained out of the use of our hearts, trained out of the response of our hearts to the world. That's the insanity present in the Western approach to science and technology, and it's killing all of us.
The whole thing is an experiment. It's a great experiment of the West inventing technologies that interfere with macrocosmic forces, and the degree to which it can control those forces and the degree to which it has to submit to being controlled by them is what history is. That's what's unfolding right now. And it's something that has to be lived through. It can't be controlled.
When we drive these huge drills into the heart of our home and pollute our life force and destroy people's lives, we're learning. We may not like what we're learning, but obviously we need to learn that.
We are still prey, and we're still subject to this ferocious world of tornadoes and earthquakes and tsunamis and infectious diseases, where there are things out there that are larger than us and that can eat us and ultimately will eat us.
One of the things I like about art making is that it privileges the sense. So to think about the spiritual realm, I guess for me, it's everything. I wonder if we're not all spirit, but in a variety of forms. If the underlying material isn't spirit.
I would want to suggest that this body is not the house of the soul, that this body is the soul, that the body itself is what thinks, that this material form is a magical thing.
If we all are part of this undifferentiated love, then our smaller tribal orientations may not be serving the ultimate goal of the experience of this life, which I think is about our commonality. I think that we are wired for connection. It's the most fundamental thing about us. We can be transformed in our cells, in our tissues, in our thinking, in our patterning by simply choosing to tell the story of what happened to us in a way that results in the possibility of meaning and connection. For me, theater practice is a way of continuing to intend, to refine, to articulate a new version of the story.
Everything is oscillating all the time. Everything has a song. My father always promised us that we would live in France. We'd go boating on the Seine, and I would learn to dance. just when it stops, there's something happening in the silence now after the song has ended that's as real as any sound I was making. Something new entered in here that's really real that we're sharing right now. Part of the reason that art has the impact it has is that there's an aesthetic dynamic inside each piece of art that produces a feeling in the person that sees it, not an emotion, a feeling. And those feelings are generated when you encounter particular meanings.
The thing about art is that the artist is always ahead of what's going to happen, and you can find this again and again. Some artists will see something that happens decades later. They're preparing you. The artists are preparing you for what's about to happen. They're giving you the tools to adjust your sense ratios to live with the coming environment before it actually happens.
Jean Gebser was a German philosopher who wrote in the mid-20th century about human ways of being and knowing in his book, The Ever-Present Origin. Gebser saw the world through the prism of 5 distinct structures of consciousness: archaic, magical, mythical, rational, and integral.
They do exist simultaneously, and they overlap because every time a new consciousness structure comes along, it's something that happens that includes the previous structures. They're still around. They just get relativized to play a background role or more specialized. Like, it's the same thing with new media. As you look at the history of media, every time a new medium comes along, it gobbles up the previous media. They still stay around, but they play a specialized function. The internet has come along and it's gobbled up all the previous media. So all the media are still around, but they all perform specialized functions. And these consciousness structures do the same thing. They stay around in a diminished capacity. They're no longer the main forum, the main stage within which human consciousness unfolds.
Archaic. The original gestation in the misty womb of the mother. The dreamless sleep of deep peace. Hearing, sensing, warm, lullaby, held in the comfort that preceded awareness.
On top of that, at some point in the Paleolithic comes along the magical consciousness structure, and it has to do with perceiving magical, invisible lines of force that connect everything magically, and all you have to have is a part of something in order to have power over the whole.
The soul waking to the sunshine of magic. Green, lush world where we lived in conscious relationship to all things. Connected by the golden threads of creation. The soul coming into being as our bodies began to feel and sense and wonder.
The Kalahari Bushman would say there's threads that connect everything to everything else. And you can follow these through the world, right? One of the things that happens, and they said, but if you follow them deep enough, you can become aware of songs before they're sung, of paintings before they're painted.
Dancing the dances and singing the songs of earth and trees and water and fire and glory that begat wholeness. Tribe, flock, clan. Together we knew and moved and thrived until restlessness crept into our hearts. We pulled too hard on the golden threads, and taut, they withdrew from our awareness, and we left the lush green and gold of magical knowing, marching now to the rhythms of the mythic. Looking back with longing, looking forward, imagining, becoming makers of myth, of story, of beauty. Myth and religion gave structure to our queries. Word displaced womb as creative force. In Egypt, magic and myth shaped the world simultaneously. In Greece, from language grew abstraction which begat distance.
Plato comes along and bases his entire worldview on rejecting the magical and the mythical consciousness structures. And in his case, it's all about philosophy and mathematics, mastering geometry, mastering the rules for correct thinking. And this builds a logical consciousness structure that enables the individual now to gain power and empower himself through mastering not spells and not religion and going to priests, but learning to think clearly for himself.
This was the rational coming into being. The methodologies built to ask and answer questions, to create and destroy. We looked at the sky, and great men told us we were no longer the center. The great and sacred circle of life, which had shielded us, shattered. We no longer felt protected within that circle that offered us the shelter of belonging. We were distracted by war and productivity and consumerism. And before we realized it might be too late, we found we were exploiting and extracting and poisoning everything around us.
So now we're suffering in the West because we've hyper-developed the mental consciousness structure with its sense of selfhood, and we've lost contact with the spiritual world, and we think that there is no such thing as a spiritual world, and all the earth is a collection of clods that you can just kick around and manipulate. But it isn't that way. But it's got us in the situation that we're in now. We're destroying the entire planet with Western technology.
The rational also brought us wonders and great beauty. Yet too many have lost the blessing of wonder as we behold the horrors. And in our feeling sense, we remember and long for other ways of being and knowing. The resonance of origin haunts us. We long for the mystery of wholeness, for the song which is eternally making and unmaking us.
Because we are always nostalgic. We lost something. We have that feeling. We have been exiled from the Garden of Eden. We have that feeling. That's why we are not satisfied with anything. I can give you a lollipop, I can give you ice cream, I can give you this, I can give you that. But still you are not happy.
As Einstein said, we cannot solve the problem with the same method that got us into the problem. Rational, reductionist science got us into the problem. So we're not going to think our way out of this, and we can't cultivate a technology, in my mind, unless the technology is the tool called nature.
In Gebser's final structure, the integral, the diaphanous presence of all ways of knowing in one time-free state of being begins to infiltrate our awareness through the myriad media of art. Art resides, for the most part, within the magical and mythical, the forms of human expression closest to origin. Music is the attempt to surpass the mental, rational world of representation, to overcome patriarchy. There is music that induces a sleep that has become sound from the archaic world.
Robert Monroe, who is kind of known as Mr. Out of Body, started looking into the effects of sound on human consciousness. But there was a certain artistry that he has, that's the magic part, if you will, of blending certain sounds together. And what he was trying to do was to introduce different sounds into each ear to create what is called a binaural beat. If you use these sounds at different frequencies, that helps take people into these very different and very deep states of consciousness. You go to a state where you can access more creative states of being and creativity than you've ever known.
The artist, poet, actor, dancer, musician pass into the time-free zone of Gebser's integral consciousness, where pairs of opposites melt away, and magic, myth, and mind become the alchemical process of the ever-present original harmonics of creation.
Visitors are driven around this road of the future for more than half a mile, up the spiral ramp showing how traffic can be lifted to the express level without wasting space. The road of tomorrow.
It's a smog mask, carrying a few cubic feet of pure salubrious air for its wearer to breathe, complete with a candle-powered defroster. A bit cumbersome, murmur the skeptical, but some people persist in trying to do something about the weather.
With the possibility of a grave infantile paralysis epidemic, San Antonio health authorities attack germ carriers on a citywide front. With war-discovered DDT and special sprayers, sections of the city are literally fogged with the insecticide in the fight to stop the spread of polio.
When I was a boy, said my daddy to me, stay out of the mines, take my warning, said he, or with dust you'll be choked and a pauper you'll be broken down, down, down.
Farmington, West Virginia, November 20th, 1968. An explosion spread by coal dust and methane rips through 9 working sections on the west side of the mine. 78 miners die in the blast. Recovery operations continue until mid-1978, and the mine is permanently sealed in November, leaving 19 victims buried inside.
And Daddy, won't you take me back to Muhlenberg County, down by the Green River where paradise lay? Well, I'm sorry, my son, but you're too late in asking. Mr. Peabody's coal train has hauled it away.
Well, they dug for their
we'll continue with the way of life as we have it because it rewards too many people. There are too many people getting rich and wealthy off this way of life. The rewards are still good. There are plenty of benefits still to be reaped out there by continuing to practice this reward-based model of plunder, of capital, of affluence. And as long as the rewards are coming in, that model will continue to be practiced until it's in jeopardy, and until it's so in jeopardy that the entire population realizes there's a mortal threat to their whole way of life. They won't change until that happens. And that isn't going to happen until a catastrophe of enough magnitude convinces everyone that they have to change.
Think of what we're facing now, and that's that you can't even guarantee that an apple is an apple anymore. Everything has been grotesquely, I think, damaged and affected by what we've done. Nature hasn't done that. We've gone in and meddled with paradise.
I have no interest in saving the planet. The planet's just fine. The planet has been through 5 mass extinctions that we know of by fossil records. We're in number 6. This one was caused by us. The only species on the planet capable of causing a mass extinction, and we're in the middle of it right now. In every situation after those mass extinctions, Mother Earth has come back better and stronger than ever before because she's really patient, she's incredibly creative, she's very intelligent. And while you and I are worried about what we're going to have for dinner tonight, she's busy planning a species 1,000,000 years down the road. So I have no concern for what's going to happen to the Earth. My big concern is what's going to happen to the life support system for human beings.
We are looking into the depths of our own flesh. I mean, this is our body. You want to clear cut another forest? That's my body. It's your body too. What are you doing? More plastic into these ocean currents? This is our blood.
I love how these guys, scientists go, human beings are the smartest, most intelligent organisms on the planet. I'm like, how many people have you met? Do you ever read the news? Have you ever read history? And that's what you're saying? If this is intelligence, we're in trouble. The universe is in trouble.
Nature doesn't judge. I get the sense from what I've learned from the nature spirits, and the sense that I get when I think about these types of things, is that they don't judge. It's your planet. It's your home. You're here to do as you will. But there are consequences.
I think Western civilization is on its way out. I think it will be gone in a couple of centuries. It can't stand the kinds of stresses that it's based on. It's not a sustainable model. Bangladesh and low-lying places like New Orleans and New York and the Netherlands, those are all the first places that are going to drown, and they're going to put a lot of population pressures on the other cities. So we're going to see something like 1 billion people on the move, 1 billion people who are not on the inside of a city somewhere. There are going to be homeless people looking for someone to take them in, and those numbers are going to increase. And eventually we're going to be forced to move into a post-urban mode.
Experts, more education, more studies are never going to solve the problems in front of us. It's only thinking differently. And then in the people who do that from their individual genius, from the world speaking inside of them to them, unique solutions will come that all of us need to have.
In the modern world, we've taken this mystery called air so much for granted because it's invisible, which was precisely why our ancestors felt it as a great sacredness. It's precisely that invisible quality that's led us to take it for granted. And so it's a perfect place to toss whatever we want to avoid, all the toxic byproducts of our industries. Just shove them into the air. What if we spoke of it as the commonwealth of breath? That this is a violent and very rapid transformation within the commonwealth of breath. Might that, induce a bit of a shift in our own feeling, in our ability to feel into what this global warming thing is about?
It would be really easy to look at the coal industry as a metaphor for the greater corporate model of things. We like to say in West Virginia we have the best government that money can buy, and the coal industry paid for every bit of it. Now we can add the fracking natural gas industry to that equation, but it's all the same. Anywhere there's resource extraction, there's a heavy price to be paid. There are now more than 24 peer-reviewed scientific studies that have shown the effects of living where coal is mined, processed, and or burned. One of those studies says that for every dollar coal is put in our economy, the citizens are paying $5 in related health care costs. This nation went to war after 9/11 for the death of 3,000 people. And we mourn those 3,000 people. But another one of those studies shows that every year in Appalachia, 4,000 people die prematurely as a result of exposure to coal toxins.
Once I stood upon this rock while mountains filled the sky. They're gone, blown up, their ashes fly, while I stand here and cry. While I stand here and cry.
So if you go to Caford Mountain, you will first pass through this really vibrant, lush green space. As you progress through that green area, you will approach this place called Hell's Gate. And once you step up on that mound of earth and look out, you will realize why. Because everything is gone. Everything. And it's utterly devastating. And when they're finished blasting that mountain into 1,000,000 little tiny pieces, and they've taken all the coal, they push all that rubble into the surrounding valleys, and then they push what's left into pretty little piles, and then they spray paint it green with hydroseed. And so a few months later, what you see is this little rolling landscape that looks green, but is nowhere near that ecosystem that once existed. And we know that ecosystem will never, ever, ever come back. It's gone forever. And it was gone for a few lumps of coal that went up the smokestacks of a coal-fired power plant in seconds. And we've done it to 500 mountains so far. And that was why 11 years ago I built this house, and it runs completely off of solar, because I just couldn't stomach the thought that my creature comforts are derived from the assassination of a mountain. One of the things that's just really frustrating to me and absolutely infuriating is the politicians who continue to wrap this all in red, white, and blue as if it's some patriotic duty to suffer, who continue to talk about our suffering as if it's a badge of honor, that we should somehow be happy and proud that we are forced to suffer for the convenience of a nation, that we should be grateful that we have the chance to break our bodies and our communities so that a few corporations can make a pile of money.
If it wasn't for the energy that's been produced by the coal miners of America, we wouldn't have the greatest nation. We wouldn't be the superpower. We wouldn't have won the wars we won. A coal miner mines the coal, we make the steel that builds the guns and ships. that basically supports the factories and the jobs it takes to build America.
Politicians like Joe Manchin talk all the time about how this is about our energy independence as a nation and how we're building a strong nation and we're providing all of these things. And it's a patriotic duty to be a coal miner and to be broken. Because I don't know anybody who spent their life working in the mines that didn't come out broken. Usually broken bones, almost always black lung. And I've asked these politicians, if this is such a patriotic thing, if this is about freedom, if this is about independence, if this is about building a great democratic nation, then when will you give my father a Purple Heart for his black lung? And the answer is never. Because my dad won't even get his black lung benefits until we have to bury him, and then it won't be enough to put the dirt over his grave.
The story says that the Creator looked down here on Earth and saw that people were living not in the way that had been intended, that they were disconnected and chaotic, and that there was violence and war. And Creator said, I have to start over. To Native people, eagle is a symbol of, a metaphor for the highest spiritual attainment that there is. Eagle flies higher than other creatures and was seen as the communicator between Creator and humans. And when Creator proposed destroying Earth, destroying the people, wiping things out and starting over, Eagle intervened. And Eagle said, no, I think there are still enough good people living in a good way, walking a good path, that it would be wrong to wipe all of it out. And Creator thought about it and said, then here's what I want. I want you to fly over the earth every day. And I want you to find 4 people who are still praying in a traditional way. And on the day that you can't find 4 people who are praying in a traditional way, then I will start over. And it's metaphor. Obviously, eagle does not fly over my house every day to see if I'm praying. But that sense of that if we can't put forth that gesture of getting up in the morning and saying thank you for this day, thank you for this place and this time, then we have moved so far from the origins of what we are supposed to be, then I don't know that there is a saving of us.
So I left home at 16, and what I decided at that moment in time was I wanted to live a life that was filled with that feeling of being with my great-grandfather, of being in those forests and walking along. One of the things I was called to was being around great trees, mature trees that have that incredible feeling that you have in that deep forest where it's almost luminous, the green color that occurs. Whenever I moved into that world, I felt more myself, I felt more loved, I felt that I was tapping into something ancient and more honest and honorable and real.
What is latent can be made transparent. So what is latent is your natural happiness. Your nature is happiness.
Acknowledging the fear then is like a threshold that you have to pass through in order to access the deep wellsprings of joy and astonishment and goodness that is really what this world offers us steadily.
Despite these well springs of beauty that connect everything born of the great cosmic womb, we humans are mired in a Newtonian model that tells us we need ever greater force to exert our will on the mass that we see as the other.
We have a real problem in that we're trained in a view of the world that is inaccurate. We're shamed into giving up our understanding that the world is alive and filled with intelligence and soul. We're shamed out of that in school, told that it's anthropocentrism, and what we're trained in is a kind of mechanomorphism, to project a mechanical nature onto everything.
We put too many stresses on the planet. We've geared too many machines, too many mega machines that are interlocking. We've put the entire planet on the inside of a machine. The whole thing now is surrounded by machines. It's on the inside of human technology. So you can't really change that. You have to wait for all that to break down, for history to move its way through it.
I stood before the waterfall and felt it calling to me, sharing the thrill of its luminous power and glory. The mist shared its song, and in those moments I became the waterfall, and it took me up into its joy, and I passed through the gates of fear and grief in which my body had lived.
Vulnerability is connected to the belief in your own worthiness. Where you believe you are worthy, you can risk exposure of your actual self with flaws and imperfections to another person toward the goal of deep, honest connection.
When you are utterly vulnerable, helplessly, hopelessly vulnerable, you find yourself in the lap of the universal mother.
When I open a session with the garden team, or the farm team, the feeling of being held and belonging to what I could only describe as the ultimate family, maybe that feeling that we all want to have with our family, that we come and we're like, oh, I'm so loved. I'm so okay. I belong here. I feel that when I'm in the garden.
When we re-inhabit our wildness, our place in this more than human world, we are restored, and we belong again in the garden that still remembers and surrounds us.
I'm sitting on the ground and I open the session and I look up, and we were in this green dome of plants, and there was this circle of spirits, and I looked up and everybody cheered, and they were cheering because I got it. And I realized in that moment that the spirits are there and desperate to talk to us as much as we are desperate to talk to them. They want to work in cooperation with us. And as ecstatic as I was, they were even more ecstatic. What nature has told me is that no matter what we do, they're going to be here. Even if we destroy the planet with nuclear power, nature's going to be here. We may not be here, but some aspect of us will be here because this is all us.
We humans seem to be conscious, feelingful, sentient creatures, and yet we're made of the same stuff as all of these other critters here. And so surely it makes more sense to assume that they too are richly sentient, though in styles that are different from ours. We're not alone here. There are many other styles of intelligence that are supporting and surrounding us and in relation to us, who we can consult.
Instantaneously, I felt this tree's energy. Everything is interconnected. It's all interconnected by an energy. My energy really isn't separate from the energy of the tree, from the energy of you, from the energy of the sunflowers, from the energy of what we in Western culture call God. It's all the same energy. What the rains this season have created in the desert here has made me learn, and the plants have told me that it's okay. We're here even in your little, building lot size yard, and with the houses on either side very close and neighborhood noise, that we're still here and we still take care of you and you still take care of us. We're people of the earth, not people of the concrete.
There's sacred space between every breath that we take. There is sacred space. And that's the whole point of all of it, is that origin doesn't disappear. It's right here. It's with us.
When you look at the way an ecosystem works, if there's damage into the ecosystem, the Gaia sends an impulse into the scenario, and it goes into that ecosystem, and at a level very far deeper than conscious awareness, the organisms feel an impetus to respond to what the problem is. And each organism in that environment begins to generate unique solutions to the problem.
So when we look at what's happening globally, it can seem very overwhelming. It's huge. It's bigger than any of us. And what do we do about it? And it can be so daunting that we feel paralyzed to the point of inaction. But one of the stories that I tell students when they come to Caford Mountain is the story of the rain. At one time I was in Haiti after a great mudslide, a terrible flood, and a lot of people perished and a lot of communities were destroyed. But I had the unprecedented opportunity as a journalist to interview the rain. And after weeks of interviewing the rain, time after time I got the same story, and that was not one single drop believed it was responsible for the flood. But this is our gift as human beings. We can be the rain that falls on fertile soil and nourishes the next generation, or we can be the rain that falls with no regard for what it destroys, and we become the flood that washes everything away. That's our gift. We get to choose which drop of rain will be.
The teaching for a lot of us is that dance is prayer. So when you're in that sacred space, when you go into that dance circle, it becomes a prayer. Every step that you take becomes a prayer. There's a whole spectrum of emotion I have about it, because in this country it was illegal for Native people to have powwows for a long time. My grandparents couldn't do that, and I think those ancestors must be so pleased to have the people gathering together and in that space dancing. We have had the Garden of Eden here. We have this incredible, beautiful, miraculous, breathtaking world, and we've taken a path of technology that just to me every day seems like it's moving us farther and farther and farther away from the origins of who we are. Origin is absolutely with us. There is magic around us all the time. There are miracles around us all the time.